to handle all the volume of traffic. We're putting in median refuges, both painted and civil. We're doing a lot of bike signals, but it's not just Portland that's doing it. So Portland has perhaps been the most successful at getting good results, but cities all across the US are doing this now. There's a couple of examples here from New York City, and it's not just in the US that's doing it. I mean, I was very impressed with facilities like this that I saw in Sydney when I was in Sydney a couple of years ago. They were doing just some pretty amazing, amazing work. So these are streets where we are improving the quality of our bike lanes. We're building better quality bike lanes. We're building buffered bike lanes. We're building cycle tracks on these streets. We've done bike signals at these locations, and we've done bike boxes at these locations. And these are just regular parts of our toolkit now that at the time when we first started trying to do them, it was really difficult to get acceptance for them. Very difficult to get acceptance from our traffic engineers. They weren't part of any standard design guide, but we have pushed, we have demonstrated success with them, and we have now adopted, we're working with a number of other cities to adopt a new national bikeway design guide that includes a lot of these facilities. It's not just engineering. Engineering is perhaps, I think engineering is the most important, again, because that idea you've got to provide people with a good experience. We've done a great job of integrating with transit. All of our buses have bike racks on them, 2 bikes. All of our light rail vehicles can carry bikes. We do quite a bit with encouragement. You can see here we talk about the Smart Trips individualized marketing program. I mentioned that before. We do Sunday parkways, where we shut down each month. In the summer now, 5 months of the year, we shut down approximately 6 to 7 miles of roadway each month on a Sunday to automobiles, and just let people come and ride bikes, walk, do whatever. We integrate programs with our parks. So there's a lot of dancing in the parks, there's rock wall climbing, there is music in the parks. We have a lot of vendors come out and sell food all day. A private organization runs the Bicycle Commute Challenge, where businesses compete against each other to see who can get the highest percentage of trips made by bike over the course of the month. We do it in September, which is the beginning of our fall. We have 4,000 annual rides a year. Not just, as I mentioned, it's not just the city doing that. This is Sunday Parkways. All you see all day long are hundreds of people, thousands of people coming at you, about 20,000 people a day. They're all smiling. People complain about their jaws hurting the next day because literally you smile all day long. People have a great time. We do promotions. We get people to ride to baseball games, sporting events. We have really big rides that attract a lot of people. We have quirky little events that are encouragement, where once a month, year-round, there's a private group that offers a breakfast to cyclists on a number of our bridges. We have a Safe Routes to School program that is doing training and encouragement in 90 schools in the city of Portland, teaching kids how to ride, how to walk, giving them on-the-street training. We have a Options Mobile. It's a car that goes around to community events all year round throughout the city, and distributes information about bicycling and about walking. We have visibility campaigns about see and be seen, promotions to look for cyclists, and promotions to cyclists to use lights, get lit ahead. So there's a private group, they will hand out free lights to people. Actually, different groups hand out lights at different times. Sometimes the city's done it, sometimes the police have done it, sometimes private individuals have done it. And we try to get lights into the hands of cyclists. This is just one of the school groups out on a ride. These are the 90 schools that the program is in. And we've also done enforcement, especially as we have introduced new facilities. We've done enforcement to make sure that motorists understand what these facilities are about. So people are probably familiar with the 4 E's of bicycling. Yeah, 4 E's. So it's engineering, encouragement, education, and enforcement. So it's not just engineering. You need having those other elements is really helpful. So some of the ways in which we're benefiting are pretty significant. while we've seen a 20% increase in vehicles on one of our central city bridges, it's all been bicycles. So we've seen, in this 18-year period, we've seen population growth, increased economic activity. That makes more trips. But because all of those trips have been borne by the bicycle, almost all of those trips have been borne by the bicycle, that bridge operates as well today for motorists as it did in the early 1990s. So that is really, from a traffic operations perspective, almost unprecedented, that you would see that increase in demand for mobility and have the bridge operate as well today for motorists as it did a long time ago. If those trips had been by car, that bridge would fail from a traffic operations perspective. And we'd have to either rebuild it, blow up the intersections at either end, or more likely just bear the cost and increase congestion. So whereas bikes in 2008 were 20% of vehicles, today in 2011 they're 22% of vehicles. And this is true on the 4 bicycle-friendly Willamette River bridges that lead into our downtown. Whereas in 2008, car use was essentially flat, bike use was up 12%. Today it's now 15%. So bikes represent 15% of all vehicles on those bridges. These people, according to the Danes, are all reducing their health care costs by 25 cents to $1 per mile traveled. So in Copenhagen, where they very carefully track both bikeway miles and health care costs, socialist nation that they are, right? They pay for health care. They know that if they get people to ride bikes, they're saving a lot of money on their health care costs. I'm just bitter about the whole health care debate in America. Sorry. It's just, we're trying to get there. We're trying to get there. We're trying to be civilized. So there was a study done by a healthcare researcher in Portland that found that by achieving our goal of 25% bicycle mode split, we will save $600 million in healthcare costs. So the benefits are exceptional if we can achieve them. And the healthcare providers know this. This is a billboard that ran a few years ago in Portland. The healthcare providers in the state, the public health agencies, the local insurance companies, and the healthcare providers, they know that if they can get people to be active, that people will be healthier, and it will cost everybody a lot less money. And so in the U.S. right now we have an obesity epidemic. It is truly an epidemic because it's increasing more than 2% a year, which I think is the legal definition or the medical definition of an epidemic. And at every level of government, at every level of public health, they're saying be active. And so in Portland, that means get on a bike. Children are biking to school again in great numbers. We are adding bike racks to our sidewalks to accommodate it. Parents are organizing bike trains. It's kind of like the walking school bus, only it's biking. They're doing this about once a month, maybe once a week. Not sure how often they're doing it. Different schools are doing different things. It's all volunteer run. So that scene in the upper right, that is just parents and kids biking to school as part of a regular thing. And they're doing that because the infrastructure, the engineering on the street is creating safe conditions. They're riding on typically bike boulevard streets, and they find that safe enough that it's very comfortable for them to ride with young kids to school. Our statistics bear this out. In Portland, our kids are being driven or taking the bus less to school than the rest of the country, and they are walking and biking to school more often than the rest of the country. So we are really reversing a decades-old trend that has seen biking and walking to school decline precipitously in the U.S. Because these are the headlines, obviously, that we're trying to avoid. And yet this is a very real thing in Portland, and the country, I should say. We are benefiting economically. A study that was done by an economics researcher at the Brookings Institute in D.C., it's a very prestigious research institution, found that because residents of the Portland metropolitan region, the whole region, on average drive 4 miles per day less than the national average. So that would be about 7 kilometers per day less than the national average. We spend $1.2 billion a year less on transportation than we otherwise would. And because Portland does not, we do not produce oil, we do not refine oil, We do not make cars. We do not make car parts. If we spent that $1.2 billion on transportation, most of it would just leave the region. So what he found is that $800 million a year stays in the Portland economy and circulates through the Portland economy. It would have otherwise left the region had we spent it, had we just driven at the national average. For each year that the cost of gasoline goes up $1 in the US, this is how much money that just leaves our local economy. It doesn't stay in the economy at all. It goes to Canada, it goes to Nigeria, it goes to Exxon, it goes to Shell, it goes to whoever is producing gasoline. It just leaves. So that's a year, that's $1. So that was actually in the period from April of 2010 until April of 2011. Gas went up $1, and it stayed at those prices. So that is money that's just leaving our economy. And as I mentioned before about the bike corrals, merchants are understanding that cyclists are valued customers. And because cyclists are not really contributing to that loss of the $240 million, it's quite likely that, all things being equal, cyclists have more money in their pockets than their friends who drive. And so merchants are recognizing this, and they are asking us to remove their car parking and put in bike parking. So this is our network today. These are all the places that citizens in Portland told us they needed more bike parking. These are all the places where we have put in bicycle corrals on the street. Every single one at the request of a business owner. These are ones that are currently in the works or pending, and that just gives you a close-up. So these are all commercial areas in the city. About 75 on-street corrals, about 110 parking spaces removed, about 1,100 or so bicycle parking spaces added.
How far will people walk to actually put their bike in corrals? Done research on that?
We tend to put them at the corners because they also double as a nice curb extension for crossing. I don't know. That's a good question. Half a block?
We find here that people just, attach their bike to a pole or whatever, even if the bike rack's 50 metres away. So
yeah, and people still do that to a certain extent. But when we put in these bike corrals, so we're putting in 10 racks typically, anywhere from 6 to 12 racks per corral, depending on the size. And there might have been 1 or 2 racks on the sidewalk. So we remove those racks from the sidewalk. You still see bikes, the occasional bike locked to a pole, but mostly you're seeing bikes in the corrals. Yeah. I mentioned before that we were doing this for pennies. So a number of years ago, we took a look to see if we had to replace our bikeway network. This was in 2007. If we had to replace our bikeway network, what would it cost us? If it just disappeared overnight, what would it cost us? About $60 million. Just to put it in perspective, the other thing that $60 million will buy you is about 1 mile of urban freeway. So our entire bikeway network, which is serving the transportation needs of 6% of the city at that time, and still is equivalent to about the cost of 1 mile of freeway. We've spent very little money on bicycling. We've accomplished little. We've accomplished much for little. Even today, where we are spending the most we've ever spent, about $7 million a year, it's still only about 5.5% of our overall capital budget for transportation. In our region, we still don't spend much on bicycling. This is $153 million cumulatively spent in a 15-year period on active transportation. So that includes both biking and walking. Walking is very expensive. Walking facilities are very expensive. We probably spend